Hey guys, welcome to Sad Dad's 49th annual Father's Day Spectacularama and MAI TAI mixer. Welcome. This episode is best enjoyed with a MAI TAI in your hand. I don't know why. It's Father's Day and I like MAI TAI. So I'll give you a second to get your MAI TAI mixed up. Good. I'm going to come clean with you guys. I've never had a MAI TAI in my life. It sounds like a martial art. A black belt in MAI TAI. This is silly. Oh, it's Father's Day. It's Father's Day. Yes. We did it. We made it all the way to Father's Day. This is great. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And just happy Father's Day to everybody. Everybody who has a dad, who knows a dad. Just yeah. I don't know. I'm not one of those people that's like, well, it can't be Father's Day for mothers too. You know, nobody wishes me Happy Father's Day on Mother's Day. It's like, just shut up, dude. Come on. You're better than that. Anyway, yeah, this is a bonus episode. You guys made it too. And my special guest today is, wait for it, my dad. Yeah. I have my dad on as a guest. And we sit down and we talk about his dad. And we talk about him being a dad and dad to me. And so we talked for a while. I don't know. I mean, it was interesting for me, you know, just to hear like old family stories. I'm not sure how interesting this is going to be for everybody else, but there's some genuinely fun and charming moments. We just finished up recording it a few minutes ago. And Abby, my daughter, makes a brief appearance with a small emergency of her own. So the dadding never stops. And so I hope you guys enjoy this. If you don't, that's okay. It's just a bonus episode. We're just having fun on Father's Day. Are you back again? Yeah. What are you doing? Eating apples. Uh-huh. Having a healthy snack? Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, you're just like a moth to the flame when it comes to me recording, isn't it? I guess. You just want to see what's going on. Yeah, it's called my name. You know how like when you turn on the light and all the bugs go to the light? You know, like the moths and June bugs and stuff? Yeah. That's like, this microphone is the light bulb, and you're like the June bugs. Are you buzzing around? Yeah. You know, people can't see you dancing, right? They can hear you maybe a little bit thumping around. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is the Father's Day edition of Sad Dad with my dad, Arsen Apkarian, everybody. So sit back, relax with your MAI TAI. You can just really drink anything. I don't care. Just make it a Sunday fun day. Just have fun. Be loosey goosey with it. You know, if you got a good relationship with your dad, make sure you text him. Send him a text message. My dad text messages now. It's kind of cool. That microphone doesn't work, sweetheart. It's not working right now. I don't have it set up. Anyway.
I didn't want to talk if that was on, so...
You know what? Tomorrow's Father's Day, right?
Uh-huh.
You and Mommy were working on my gift yesterday?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Can't wait to get it. I'm not going to be able to get it until tomorrow. Well, this episode's releasing on Father's Day, so I will have it by then. Is it a good one? Mm-hmm. Did you give me a cool gift? Yeah? You don't seem very convincing. I'm sure it'll be great. You're not? Okay, fine. All right, guys. Sad Dad Father's Day edition coming at you right now. I'll catch you in just a little bit. All right. Let me silence my cell phone.
I left mine at the house.
Oh, that's a good move. Cool. Well, I'm recording you right now.
You're recording me right now?
I am. It's better than being like, okay, we're gonna go.
Okay. You're not even going to count or anything, huh?
I had to count in my
Okay.
earphones.
Okay.
I did it without you. So you are actually the first dad of any kind I've had as a guest.
Well, that's terrific. Start with number one, huh?
Can't answer with head nods, Dad.
Well, I'm just learning this thing,
That's funny.
Well, they didn't even do talkies when I was a kid. So.
No, that was you had black and white. Did you grow up on black and white television?
Grew up on black and white TV, and we didn't have a TV until I was 5.
Wow.
And then it was black and white till, probably until I was in high school. Then I finally broke down and bought a color TV.
Wow. It's what did you guys do in lieu of TV? Just read and listen to Auntie Arlene play piano.
Well, at 5, I don't know. We just played. We didn't really miss it that much.
What kind of toys did you have in the 50s?
I had a lot of toy soldiers and trucks and cars, and I had a train set, but it was the kind that had a key and you wound it up and let it run on the track. I know.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was fun. I had a couple different engines and stuff like that. Yeah.
Living out here in the country.
Yeah. Out here, you just sort of played with whatever was available.
Was the house you're in now built at that time, or was that back at the old house at the back of the property?
Well, no, they built the new house when I was about 5 or 6. And so
do you remember that? I mean, do you remember that?
Oh, I remember them building it, and I remember bits and pieces of living in the old house. There were all kinds of things that were kind of scary and creepy about that old house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
lots of spider webs.
A lot of spider webs.
Spiders.
What was it? Was it a 2-story house, or what?
No, it was a single story, and Mom and Dad bought it in 1944, and it was just basically a one-room kind of thing.
Oh,
kitchen and a living room and one bedroom. And,
wow.
And your grandpa, added bedrooms onto it, and it was kind of a patchwork kind of a deal.
Oh, interesting.
But it was okay. I mean, it was warm in the winter and semi-cool in the summer.
Yeah.
And
at what point? And so when you guys were living in that house, was Grandpa still doing like the vineyards and the chickens and stuff, or? No,
when we were back there, he was doing the vineyard, and he used to have outside jobs. The longest one he was working for a place called Rancher's Cotton Oil, and he was climbing up on these huge mountains of cottonseed and laying out canvas tarps to cover them and stuff like
I didn't
that.
know that.
It was kind of risky. Every now and then somebody would slide into the seeds and disappear.
Just lost. Yeah. That is pretty scary.
Yeah.
And normally I ask my guests about their dads. So tell us about Grandpa. Where did he grow up?
Well, my dad, your grandpa, grew up in, believe, like Reedley, Sanger, Selma, that general area. They moved around a lot because it was the Depression, and they'd farm for a while, and then they'd lose that property, and then buy another piece of property, and then lose that. And there was a lot of transients going on back then. And he was real creative. He only got a high school education, and if he'd have got a college degree, I think he would have probably been an engineer or something, because when he needed something, they didn't have a lot of money, so he would just cobble something together, and it almost always worked. It was kind of amazing.
Yeah, I've heard stories about him doing some goofy things, like you have that little that steam engine that he built.
He built a steam engine. He did that during World War II, and there was little or nothing to do back then except listen to the radio at night. And so
and he couldn't serve because he was too old, or because he had 2 brothers in the service.
Well, he had 3 brothers in the service.
Wow.
And I think he was in the National Guard or something, but they kept one son at home at least. And but anyway, going back to that little steam engine, he made it out of shell casings from 22s, and he back then the cigarette wrappers were made out of lead, and he just collected cigarette wrappers until he had enough lead to make a flywheel and
wow, and
cast parts.
Oh yeah, he melted it down and he cast these parts. I mean, it's so, did it do anything, or did
it worked? It
yeah.
worked. It probably the flywheel kind of came apart lately, but I bet you if I put it back on, it'd work.
Yeah.
You know it.
I mean, but it didn't. He didn't build it to serve a purpose. It was
just a steam engine that ran, and you just chugga, and
just
watched
at
it. Yeah. Well, it was sort of amazing that this thing was made out of nails and bent wire, and still it worked.
A working miniature steam engine, and it's only. I mean, I've seen it. It's only
it's less than a foot long.
Yeah, it's just tiny,
and maybe about 5 inches tall.
That's so interesting. Did they ever build? Was there ever a steam engine? Could it be the world's smallest steam engine?
I don't think so. But
what would they? I mean, why would you build a small steam engine? I mean,
well, he was always doing stuff like that. In high school, they had to have some kind of a project in shop, and so he made a 2-cylinder motor out of a Model A motor, which was 4 cylinders, but part of it had broken and wasn't working, so he just literally sawed a motor in half, and then put the pieces back together, and made this motor, and it ran.
That's nuts, man.
So, and he did all kinds of fun stuff. He wanted to fly, and so he built his own airplane, but he never put the wings on it. So he'd be driving down the road in this airplane, steering it with the rudder and all this kind of stuff. And
just down here on Cedar Avenue?
No, this was back when he lived in Selma.
Oh, okay.
But and there wasn't any traffic or anything back then. It was just Model A's and Model T's and
just
stuff.
Him goofing around.
And it had like bicycle wheels on it. And one time he turned too quick and it just folded.
Oh, jeez.
But he was very clever about doing that kind of stuff. He liked model airplanes, and he made lots of model airplanes, and he used to drive truck for his dad. Actually, it was his stepdad had a grocery store in Oakland, and they would grow vegetables and produce like watermelons and stuff here in the valley, and then he would drive them over, and he would say that the truck was overloaded, and it wouldn't go over the Pacheco Pass forward, so they had to back up over the Pacheco Pass, which you would think is kind of strange, but he said lots of trucks were backing up the Pacheco Pass.
I mean, I have listeners all over the world, actually, and so for those of you, Pacheco Pass is this very, very steep stretch of road that separates the Central Valley, California, from like the Bay Area, getting into like San Jose, and it's they've redone it in the last few years. It's way better now. It's
4-lane now, but it was just a 2-lane road.
And I mean, the grade's a lot easier too. It's not. I remember, when I was just learning to drive, you would have me drive Pacheco Pass, and it was scary back then. Back just 15 years ago, it was a real scary. I can't imagine doing it in an overloaded produce truck backwards.
Well, and it was going slow. I mean, they weren't going terribly fast, but still, it had to be a challenge.
Yeah, and so he grew up out in Selma. At what point did he meet Grandma? Because he was like 9 years older than Grandma, wasn't he?
Something, I think 7 to 9 years.
Yeah,
and I don't know how they met. I think it was an arranged marriage, to be honest with you. And they got married, and they basically lived in a little, I can't really call it a house. It was more like a shed or something on their, I think my mom's parents' property. And, they'd grow their own vegetables and do stuff to make money. Back then, you had to be pretty clever because it was the Depression, and there just wasn't a lot to do. And so he would take grapevines and make cuttings, and from those make rootings, and then he would sell those and make a little extra money.
He was just hustling, huh?
Yeah, and he was doing a lot of tractor work for the other farmers around, and just he worked a lot.
Yeah.
I remember the one thing about my dad was that he worked 7 days a week.
Yeah,
seemed
yeah.
like, and he was a very quiet person,
Mm-hmm.
very withdrawn. He didn't, it wasn't like he was shy or anything. He just didn't have a whole lot to say. And I have a feeling it was partly because he worked by himself all the time and
sure.
didn't really, need
Yeah.
conversation.
I mean, even when I knew him, he really liked the solitude of working out in his shop and just turning on the radio. And he was deaf at that point, practically. And just,
Well, that, and he used to, your grandma used to call him to come in and stuff, and so he'd turn the radio up so she couldn't get through to him. I was at the other end of the property, the absolute opposite corner of the property, doing tractor work, and I heard her yelling, and I came home, and she said, "You could hear me way out there, and he's in the shop right, past the backyard, and he couldn't
funny.
hear me." I think he used to ignore her just to
to
get
he used
her
to
go.
do a lot of funny things to annoy grandma. Like, I just remember him spending the whole morning chopping up the eggs she'd cook him for breakfast into like a fine vapor on his plate. And just the clinking of his knife on the plate. I think just used to drive her bonkers.
Well, he had false teeth, but they weren't comfortable, so he used to gum everything.
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
he'd cut it into small pieces, and he could eat pretty much anything. I don't think he could eat like nuts because that was just a little too much.
Sure.
But dried fruit.
And he so he meets grandma in this whatever arranged thing. They're living on this shack. And then they have Auntie Peggy, right?
Yeah. Oh, they honeymooned on Catalina Island.
Whoa.
But because they were newlyweds, they sent a chaperone. My dad's sister went with them.
What? Well, I don't understand. What is it, newlywed?
I'm telling you, back then, it was everything was controlled.
Was that-
arranged weddings,
Yeah.
and they were young, so they needed somebody to kind of watch over them or something. I don't know.
That is bizarre.
But I remember your grandma complaining about it. She thought that was really kind of unfair.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Was that Aunt Tomar? Was it
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was.
How funny. Yeah, that's it. But I mean, Catalina, that's nice. I mean, that seems like a nice place to honeymoon.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go there because I heard so much about it, and finally, just the last few years, we've been going over there for the jazz festival, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And then, so they're living in the shack. At what point do they? So, in 1945, or 1944, they buy this property, this 20-acre plot.
They bought it in '44, which was kind of close to the end of the war. And I mean, back then it was like a mule and a plow. It wasn't real mechanized.
I mean, I could be wrong about this. I feel like, I don't know if it was you or somebody else told me, it wasn't necessarily even a piece of farmland when they bought it.
It was swamp.
Yeah.
It was really swampy. There was out of the 20 acres, there was probably only like maybe 7 or 8 that was actually had vines on it and was level. The rest of it was swampland, and they basically cut down willow trees and drained water and filled in holes and did the best they could to level it out.
Yeah.
And there was a irrigation ditch that ran through the place, and it kind of made this zigzag course through the property. And the old house didn't have a bathroom at first, and so they built a shed that straddled the ditch, and that was where they went to take showers and stuff. And then the water just drained into the ditch.
Wow.
And then finally, your grandpa built a bathroom with a shower. And
Wow, that's something else. And you weren't around yet, though, at that point, or were you?
no, I was only. Well, I was there the first 5 years of my life, so from 1950 to about 1955. And that shed was still there. They weren't using it to take showers, but it was a real dark brown, and we used to call it the chocolate house.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah.
A little whimsy.
Yeah. Well, and then when they put the pipeline in and got rid of the ditch, somehow he got that thing off the ditch bank and just used it for a shed on flat ground. I don't know how he managed to get it out of there, but he did.
Wow.
And,
yeah, I mean, that was just kind of. Now, was that ingenuity, was that just his generation, or was he particularly gifted as far as being able to figure that kind of stuff out?
I would say both. That was an era when they were just coming up with all kinds of new innovations. The Model A, the Model T. I mean, they started out with like ox carts and went to, going into outer space.
Yeah, right.
All in one lifetime.
Yeah, right.
And there was all kinds of new inventions coming along, and so being creative was just something that everybody, did.
Yeah.
And I think he was particularly talented in that, in that he could sort of envision what he wanted and, manufacture it. There's a farm tool for vineyards called a French plow, and it's designed it goes in between the vines and then swings out and when there's a vine and swings back in. And he made one of those out of a few obvious plow parts, but then he got the hydraulics out of an old car and put some batteries on it to do something. And just basically made it with hoses and springs and whatever. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do something like that, but most of the time it doesn't work. But he always seemed to make it work, and that was the thing that always amazed me, that he wasn't just creative and trying to make something. He actually thought it out and made it work.
And so you came along in 1950. Grandpa was born in 09, so he would have been kind of an older dad, huh?
Yeah,
he was in his 40s when he had you.
So my oldest sister's 14 years older than me.
Yeah.
So there was quite a span there.
What was your relationship like with Grandpa?
Well, he was not a real touchy-feely, huggy kind of guy. He was, his big thing was to give you a hug and then rub his stubbly face across your face so it felt like sandpaper. And he thought that was really funny. That makes you tend to be a little standoffish in itself.
Sure,
But he always, whatever was needed, he provided it. And if he had to work extra to do it, he would.
Yeah.
And I think it was around 1960 when they started the chicken business and the egg farm, and that was again to make more money so that they could provide for all of these wild and crazy kids.
Yeah.
And,
there was only 3 of you. I mean,
I know,
crazy.
but the vineyard really never did produce a whole lot. I mean, they did almost all the labor themselves, and if they didn't do that, they wouldn't make any money at all.
Right.
And so the egg business was something that was supposed to be a little bit more lucrative.
Sure.
And the only problem with that was you work 7 days a week. The eggs just keep showing up. Chickens never take a vacation.
Because they went all in because they had 3
chicken houses.
200-foot-long chicken houses.
Yeah, 60,000 chickens.
Jesus, 60,000 chickens?
60,000 chickens.
Oh my
and
God.
Every day you come home from school and go and feed the chickens and gather the eggs and then spend a couple hours in the processing room washing and grading and candling eggs and putting them away. So it was a lot of work.
It was really, was that all just you, your 2 sisters, and Grandma and Grandpa? I mean, was there anybody else helping you out at that time?
Actually, it was just me and my one sister. By that time,
Peggy had moved.
She'd moved down to San Diego. And so, we did almost all the work ourselves. And eventually, they hired a couple of people to help in the processing. But still, there was very little after school activities because I usually had to come home and go to work.
Right.
And
did your schoolwork suffer from that, or?
No, I was just smart enough to be lazy at school. I could do the homework at school and not have to bring it home.
Right.
And so that wasn't a problem.
And you're only 10 years old at this point. Is that? I mean, if it was 1960.
Yeah, 10 years old, and then I think your grandpa had a nervous breakdown somewhere around when I was about 12 or 14.
Just working his whole life, huh?
Yeah.
Caught up with him.
And so he had to go away for probably 4 to 6 months.
Wow.
Timeline is not very good for me, but
sure.
Peggy's husband,
Aaron,
Aaron, my brother-in-law, was going to come do the farm work, and he made about 2 passes through the vineyard. He was plowing or something, and there's a drop-off on the back end that drops about 4 feet, and he went over the end and kind of got stuck, and that was it. He just said, sorry, you have to find somebody else.
Yeah, this isn't going to work.
So we did farm work. I learned how to drive the tractor when I was 10, so came home from school and did tractor work.
Well, that's, I mean, jeez, man. That's something else.
Yeah. And your grandpa used to like to make everything straight. You know, if you made a furrow down the road, it had to be straight. And, of course, I'm daydreaming, and so my furrows kind of, look like macaroni or something.
Sure.
And
That drive me bonkers.
in 1990, I'd bought the farm from them in 1985 so that they could retire, but they didn't want to move, so we gave them a life estate, and I'm farming it. And one day I'd gone out and made furrows to irrigate, and he was really ragging on me about, they're not being straight, know, and then in 1990 I broke my leg.
Oh, right.
And so he had to make furrows. And so I come home from the hospital, and he says, see how straight they are? And I said, yeah, but you missed 3 rows. I said, what?
You're losing it, old man.
Anyway.
And now, did the egg farming prove to be as lucrative as they thought it would be, or
it wasn't in the beginning? I think it was about early 70s. The price of eggs went down and the price of chicken feed went up, and they almost lost the property. And one of our uncles, your Uncle Andy, gave him enough money to bail him out, and then they paid him back over a period of time. But that was a real traumatic time for them, because they were afraid they were going to lose this farm that they'd had for forever.
And, no doubt.
And it kind of, I'm sure it gave them like backflashes of when they were in the Depression and having to move a lot because they kept losing their property.
Sure.
And they once they had a piece of land, they wanted to, put down roots.
No doubt.
So anyway, they managed to salvage it, and then they sold off the chickens and most of the buildings, and it was funny. They wanted to, before I bought it, they were thinking about selling it, and a realtor came out and said, "There's too much junk here. Nobody's going to buy it because there's so much junk." And that was your grandpa. He
was a junker.
He was a junker. Well, he would collect this stuff, and that's what he used to make some of the things that he made. It was like, everything has value. You can make something out of that.
I mean, I remember you bringing home just washers and dryers and stuff, and just here you go, Dad. And
busy work,
ready for with his pliers, ready to go. I mean, the guy was a surgeon with a pair of pliers.
So anyway, one summer they were kind of frustrated because they wanted to sell, and they had all this junk. And so I said, well, okay, when I get off work, I'll come home and I'll cut up steel and load up your truck, and then you can take it and to the junkyard in the morning, and we'll do that until the junk's gone, and then we'll tear down some of the old buildings and sheds and stuff. And so I did that for a whole summer, and there were so many old buildings like the Chocolate House that actually made about a 350-foot fence around my backyard in town out of old barnwood kind of stuff.
Oh, no kidding. That was the house on Arthur?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And a 12-by-12 redwood deck, too.
Wow.
But then they said, hey, this place looks pretty good. We think we'll stay.
Damn it. and you're what, in your late 20s at that point you're doing all that, or are you?
Yeah, I think, let's see. Yeah, mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's okay. And then I guess at this point we can kind of transition over to you being my dad. So you met Mom. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. You were in correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like I've heard this said before, but you didn't when you started school, you didn't speak English.
Right.
You were you were fluent only in Armenian.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a real culture shock for me.
Yeah.
Because started kindergarten, and I didn't really speak English, and so I was trying to learn that, and I would get confused, and I'd kind of mix Armenian and English, and people are going, "What? What's a pacha?" And
Wow. Yeah,
so,
that's
so.
surreal.
And now I have trouble. I can't really speak Armenian anymore, and I think it's a psychological thing because I got laughed at so much, and teased so much that I literally blocked it out of my head. You know, I can understand it when I hear people talking, but I just can't seem to communicate it.
But I mean, Grandma and Grandpa were fluent in English, weren't they?
Yes, they were.
Why do you feel like they didn't teach, or they just
Well,
assumed
they
school would teach you English?
they wanted to preserve the heritage. They did a lot of that stuff. We had to go to Armenian school on Saturdays, and so we could learn Armenian, and they wanted to maintain their heritage, and they kind of overdid it as far as I was concerned. So when I had children, I decided that you could investigate it if you wanted to, but I wasn't going to, force it on you.
Yeah, right.
And, maybe I should have been a little more aggressive about it, but you've always been the kind that researches everything, and I figured if you really wanted to know, you could find out.
Yeah, fair enough.
And, I think the goal of every father should be to try and be a little bit better than the father that they had.
Sure.
And so my dad was pretty good. I mean, he was a good provider and pretty much a straight shooter. He yelled at people a lot, but I don't think he ever spanked me. And although sometimes when he yelled at you, it was like worse than being spanked, I think. But anyway, we try. We all make mistakes.
Sure.
But you try to do the best you can and try and be a little bit better, and
definitely
hope it works.
So you were, I mean, you were basically, in terms of the year you were born, I mean, you're a baby boomer through and through. I mean, you were right smack dab in the middle of it. So you came up in like the 60s and stuff. I mean, what was going to high school like in the 60s? Is that, was it really as fun and free as the movies make it out to be, or was it?
Well, Fresno is a little bit backward, and they were still in the 60s. They were still like upset about Elvis Presley, and I mean, and here when I was 16, when I was going up to San Francisco to, the Fillmore and places like that to see concerts, and the whole Flower Power thing was going in. And then at the same time that all this is happening, you have to understand that the thing was going on where black people were trying to get equal rights and civil rights movement and all that kind of stuff. And so I remember in my junior and senior year, they weren't really riots. They were just people congregating and talking, but the people in charge tended to overreact an awful lot.
Sure.
I remember one time I'd stopped to do something on the way home from school, and I had to get into the trunk of my car, and I opened up the trunk, and there was the old kind of car jack in there that, that's a straight rod with a little black thing that you crank up. And, and somebody went by and saw it and thought it was a gun, and the next thing I knew, I was surrounded by sheriff's cars.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
I opened up the trunk, and they said, it's a jack.
Now, and were you at that time perceived as like a person of color? I mean, as being Armenian, were you kind of on the list of people that received a lot of hate, or were you just
not really? Your grandma and grandpa got a lot of that. They, I mean, sometimes they had to fight their way home, literally fight their way home.
Wow.
But I never experienced anything like that. Truth be told, the elementary school that I went to was predominantly black, and the rest of it was mostly Hispanic, and then there was probably like maybe 3 white kids in every class, and to be honest with you, I thought I was black until I got to high school. I didn't know.
That's funny.
But
wow, that's great.
it was it was a different kind of time. There was a lot of things going on all at once, and there was when I went to college, there was a lot of demonstrations and protests and stuff.
You're getting into Vietnam at that point.
Yeah, and personally, I didn't understand half of what was going on. I mean, I understand equal rights and stuff, but a lot of the demonstrations were just kind of, I don't know, I didn't understand it.
Sure.
It was, and I had friends that said, how can you not get involved? And I said, well, I'm trying to figure out who I am. I can't really, do that and do this too. And
and it seems like, I don't know if it was just the time or you were lucky, but it seems like you had all these really cool jobs like around that time. I mean, because you met Mom, you were a photographer, right?
Yeah, I was. Well, when I was in high school, I got a job as a usher in a local place called Hardy's Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And I did that, and I worked for summers in a cannery doing the cleanup crew.
Yeah, that's is that when you broke your back?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I had, I fell about 15 or 20 feet and landed on my head. The safest part to land on. But yeah, I did that. And then I moved up to the Bay Area, and mainly because I had a girlfriend up there. But I was going to college up there, and I was working my way through, and I went to work for a place called Auto Week magazine. And started out as, janitor gopher, and worked my way up into the production department and then into the photo department, and then they sent me to races to take pictures. And,
wow.
They even and they had they had two other publications. One was American Collector and one was American Boating or something like that.
Okay.
And I remember they were doing a couple of feature articles on the boating thing, and they needed models, so I got to be a model. They do photo shoots and stuff. It's kind of fun.
Well, but like, what, like, did you have any kind of a background in photography, or was it just kind of like, here's a camera, get out there, kid, type of thing?
That was pretty much it. I was doing my janitor thing, and
I can't believe you went from a janitor to
I know.
a
Well, no,
photographer.
seriously. I mean, they did a lot of paste up and artwork and stuff, and so there was trash everywhere all the time. And so I would literally every day, a couple times a day, go through the production department and dump trash cans and kind of clean up the floor so it didn't look totally overgrown. But it was interesting stuff that they were doing. So I was kind of like looking over everybody's shoulder, and finally the editor of the magazine said, "Look, if you want to learn how to do this, just come in on your own time, and we'll show you how." And so I sort of transitioned into the production department, actually pasting up stuff to make a newspaper, and then the photo editor got a hold of me and said, "Look, if you were really interested in photography and stuff, let me show you how to do this." And then I became the assistant photo editor, and then the photo editor, and then they started sending me to races, and it was a real wild and crazy job. I mean, you worked all week putting the paper together, and then all weekend going out and shooting pictures of races. So it was just a go kind of thing.
It sounds pretty exciting, though.
It was a really,
especially because you're what, like 20 at this time?
Yeah. I was.
It's a great job for a 20-year-old.
Yeah,
I can't imagine a better one.
20 to about 23, I think. It's just a 3 or 4 year period where I did that, but it was a real education.
And that's where you met Mom. She was a typesetter. What was she doing?
She was a. Everybody had like two jobs. There was a she was a typesetter, and she was the switchboard operator. Okay. That was back in the days where they had the little wires you plugged into the machine, to give you different people.
And for the listeners, the only reason I, as a 32-year-old man, know what a typesetter is because my parents used to do it. But they used to literally have to like set the each individual letter for the plate.
That's linotype, and that was just a little before my time.
See, I don't even know what it's.
Yeah,
I thought I knew what it was.
Yeah, that was hot lead and all this kind of stuff. And when your mom was a typesetter, they actually had computers that printed it out. But they'd print columns of type, and then you had to actually wax the backside and paste them down and move them around.
Wow! And so she was literally like doing the layout of each page.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And but I think the funny part about it is I really was always good at estimating how long something would take. It's just been something that I can do, and I'd be in there pasting my little heart away, putting this paper together, and the thing had to be done by noon on Wednesday because they had to fly it from the Bay Area up to Seattle where it was printed, and they actually bought a plain seat and put the artwork and the mailing labels in the seat.
Shit.
And flew it to,
wow,
and so you had to get done by noon because you had to get to the airport, which was like you drive from the East Bay, across the Bay Bridge, through San Francisco, and then down the peninsula to the airport.
Wow.
And anyway, the publisher would come in and say, "When's this thing going to be done?" And the editors didn't know. They couldn't say anything, and so he'd be wandering around, kind of like looking over everybody's shoulder to see where they're at and what they're doing. And one day I said, it'll be done in about 45 minutes. And he looked at me and I said, really? And it was done in 45 minutes. And so after a while, he wouldn't even go in and talk to the editors. He'd just come over and lean over my shoulder, and I'd tell him when it's going to be done, and then he'd go away, and they're going, "What are you saying?"
How funny. And so how soon after that? So you and Mom you guys meet at the paper, and you get married. And do you still work at the paper for a little while you're married? Or
we worked there for well, gosh. I'm really bad with time and how long but we probably worked there another 2 years, and they actually bought their own printing equipment and moved to Reno, Nevada.
Oh, that's why you guys moved.
And so we moved with them, and really didn't like Reno, Nevada. It was not a very good place. It was all tourists and alcoholics, and just a hard place to live.
Yeah.
And plus, they wanted me to learn how to do all the plate making and the actual photo work that's done, where you take pictures of the artwork and make negatives and then burn plates and stuff. And so I learned all of that. And again, I was really good at estimating how long things would take. And I think that's why they stuck me in there, was because I somehow could figure it out and get it done. And but it was just not a good place to live, and we were working 14 hours a day, and your oldest brother was bipolar, and I don't think he went to sleep until he was about 7, and so we.
That's hard. It's hard on a marriage and a relationship.
We actually got divorced in Reno. Well, that's one thing about Reno. It's real easy to get a divorce. And, and I think that's why we got a divorce. So instead of working it out, it was just a lot quicker and easier to get a divorce.
Yeah, right.
I tell everybody our divorce failed worse than our marriage, so we got back together. And
after you guys got back together, is that when you moved back to Fresno? Or
well,
California?
Actually, we got divorced, and we continued to work at the same place for a while, and I just got to the point where this is crazy. I'm not getting anywhere, and I'm miserable. So I started thinking, where's the last place I was where I was okay? And I decided it was back in Fresno, so I moved back to Fresno.
Yeah.
And then when your mom found out that I moved back to Fresno, she moved back to the Bay Area and stayed with her parents. And then she would come and visit, and because I was taking care of your older brother, and after a while we decided, why don't we try this over again? Maybe we were just a little hasty.
Yeah.
And so we got back together, got married again.
Yeah,
and
well, that's great, because I mean, you guys were so young. You were in early 20s when you're trying to figure all this stuff out.
Yeah.
So I mean, it makes sense that you might make a hasty decision or just not know what
there
to do.
wasn't anybody in Reno that was going to give you good advice.
Sure, I mean, all your you guys are both separated from your family and your workaholic. I mean, it makes sense. And then you actually touched on it briefly. Yeah, I mean, the 70s seemed like a really rough time to have a kid who's bipolar. I mean, because back then it wasn't even called bipolar. It was
they didn't know what it was, and they didn't know how to treat it. And they were, at that point, anybody that was really hyper, they gave them sedatives and depressants, and they react the complete opposite to depressants. And on our own, we figured out that if we gave him coffee, it would calm him down.
Oh, weird.
And so we finally just threw away the phenobarbital and started just giving him black coffee or coffee with cream.
Yeah, yeah.
And he still drinks a lot of coffee now because it keeps him calm.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, I don't know. So, I always joke with myself sometimes because I drink a lot of coffee too. And so I feel like sometimes I drink so much I kind of come out the other side, and I'm like, oh, I'm just sleepy. I don't know if maybe I'm just crashing off of the caffeine from earlier. I don't know, but but you say that and I'm like, oh no. Coffee made my bipolar brother sleepy. Coffee makes me sleepy.
I'm not bipolar, and coffee makes me kind of wound up if I drink too much.
Yeah.
Now your mother, she can drink a pot of coffee and go to bed.
Yeah.
So
okay,
everybody's different, and everybody reacts differently to it. And so who knows which side of the family you're getting your coffee attitude about?
Yeah. Right. So. And and so you have Arsen, my older brother, and you raised him. He was born in 1972, and so you're trying to figure all this stuff out with him. But in the meantime, too, you're what are you doing for work at that time, though? I mean, because you obviously weren't working at the paper anymore.
Well, that was a really hard time because I moved back to Fresno and found out that I was overqualified for everything.
Oh, sure.
People didn't know what I was talking about when I was talking about, color separations and negatives and plates and all this kind of stuff. They did printing in Fresno, but it was not anything as sophisticated and definitely not anything computerized.
Oh, right.
And in Reno, everything was computerized already.
So that was the spark for your own business.
Well, not right away. At first, I just finally threw my resume away and said, yeah, I think I can make plates. And I got to working for a printing company, and it was a company that made forms, business forms, and I worked for them for 2 or 3 years, and then went to work for another company that did more high-end stuff. Yeah, and worked for them for a couple of years, and then finally decided to go out on my own and start my own business. And actually, I didn't really go out on my own. I had 2 partners, and we started a sign business of all things. And we were doing pretty well. We were in business for 6 months, and one of my partners died. Oh, and so anyway, we carried on. And I don't know, I think maybe 2 years into it, your mom said she wanted to start a typesetting business. Yeah. And we had extra room in our offices, so we set her up with a typesetting machine and a little camera.
I kind of love that too, because I mean, it was the 70s, so it's kind of it's still not the most progressive of eras, and the fact that you were so supportive in your wife's business endeavor, I think is really cool. I mean the way you kind of just were like, go. Yeah. And I thought that was really neat. I've always thought that was really neat. So way to go, Dad.
Well, and her business took off right away. I mean, because
you're slaving over plates, and
she was obviously the best typesetter in town, because once everybody heard that she was starting her own business, we were beating them away with a stick. Wow. And she couldn't do typesetting and billing and the camera work all by herself. So I started helping her, and pretty soon my partner said, why don't you let me buy you out, because you're not doing me any good. Yeah, right. And so I said, okay. So we parted ways, and actually we parted ways, but we stayed in the same building because we were sharing rent. And then finally we got to the point where we needed more room, so we moved. Plus the fact that the building we were in is now where a freeway is.
And wasn't there like a bat problem in there? Hang on one second, Dad. What's up, Abby?
Where's the toilet paper?
Where's the toilet paper?
Yeah.
You need more toilet paper?
Yeah.
Did you look on the back of the toilet? There should be an extra roll up there.
Oh, I didn't know.
Well, go look. Go look. All right. Sorry, folks. We had a toilet paper emergency with Abby. Is it there?
Let me check. No.
Oh, jeez. All right. Hang on one second, Dad. All right. Okay.
Okay, so our first office was around Van Ness and Olive or somewhere in that general area. There's an off ramp right now where our office was, and so we knew it was coming. So we moved to Van Ness and McKinley, a little farther down across from City College.
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. It was an old doctor's dentist's office, and we set it up, and we had enough room to get 2 or 3 typesetting machines and more
Which
typesetters.
place were you in? Mom told me about it. Which place were you in that had the bat problem?
Although that was our third place. It was the old Fresno Guide building, and it was a big brick building, and there was this kind of belfry area, and we had one half of the building, and the other half was a printer, and the printer had this area where it was kind of like a belfry, and there were bats, and every now and then a bat would come flying through the doorway, and they're quiet. You can't really hear them. They don't make any noise.
Occasionally
but all of a sudden there'll be this fluttering sound next to your
geez.
ear, and you're going, "What's that?"
And then you guys were deep into the typesetting business, and then like Microsoft Word comes along,
Right. Desktop publishing.
Publishing,
and it turned us into a dinosaur in about 6 months' time.
Yeah.
And by that time we were like the largest typesetting business in Central California.
Wow.
And we had I don't know, I think 3 or 4, well, maybe 5 typesetters working for us.
Oh wow.
And just the work just disappeared.
Yeah.
And they still don't have typesetting businesses anymore.
Yeah, right.
And all of our competitors went out of business too.
Sure.
So it was time to find something new and different.
Yeah. Is that when you started working for Winston Chemical?
Yeah, exactly. We got out of that, and the trouble with typesetting and printing is it's just deadline. There's never any closure. There's just another job to do.
Right.
And I just really didn't want to be stressing like that all the time. And so when we closed our doors, your mom went to work for a printing company doing typesetting, and because they still had their own in-house operation. And I went to work for a chemical company making water treatment chemicals, and belonged to a friend of mine and his dad, and they wanted a salesman, and I'd never really done sales before.
And is this about the time I come along?
Actually, you were born in '86,
Right.
and we were in typesetting until about '89.
Oh, okay.
So the first 3
yeah,
years,
there's some-
you were in the building that had the bats.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And you were in one of those little walker things, and it was all linoleum, so you were just all over the place, scooting around.
How funny.
It was kind of funny. The place also had cockroaches. And so and in the wintertime, field mice would come in, and so we got a cat and brought it to the office, and it took care of the problem, but the cat disappeared, and we realized that it had gone down into the floor vents, and it was, I guess there's a maze down there, and it was just living on mice and cockroaches, and all of a sudden one day this thing comes out of there, it's just this fluffy cat, but I mean, it just barely squeezed out, and it kind of looked around, went and got a drink of water, and then went right back into it.
It became a sewer cat.
Yeah. So
that is hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
That's too funny. And I mean that business. I mean the Winston Chemical business. I remember a lot of memories of that. I mean back before you owned it. When did you actually buy? It was
Well, I went to work there in 1990, and I was doing sales and just helping make chemicals and all this kind of stuff. And my friend's dad decided that he wanted to retire, so he had routes that he ran all the time, and I had taken on some of those routes when I went to work there, but then I got all of his routes. And then my friend decided he wanted to go back to school and get a degree in chemistry, so I took on all of his routes, and basically I was doing everything except the bookwork. And in I think it was 1995, he wanted to sell the business and have some sort of a cushion to help him until he got tenure. So he sold me the business, and we paid him off and took off with it. And we were the warehouse was in town, and that was real inconvenient because we were out here in the country. So eventually we bought a building that was for sale to be moved and dragged it out here.
What year was it that you bought? I don't know if you said it and I missed it, but what year did you actually buy the business?
1995.
1995. Got it. And there was one thing I wanted to backtrack on. I forgot to ask you about it. So there's a 14-year gap between my older brother and me. What was, I mean, what was, and then we had Kenny. I mean, then we had my younger brother. What was,
and the age difference between you and him is the same as my own sister and me.
Yeah, which is really funny.
Strange, fluky kind of thing.
But I guess what was that? What was the where did that spark come from? I mean, what was it? Was it like the biological clocks were ticking, or?
No, Arsen, your older brother, was just a real handful. And we were just focused on trying to raise him and help him, and
run your business.
We didn't have time to think about having another kid at that point. It was kind of like a full-time job. And then, I don't know, 14 years later, your mom decided that she'd like to have another go-round, and a lot of her friends were having kids at that time, and so she thought it'd be kind of fun to have you, same age as, her friends' kids, and yada, yada. So there we go.
There you go.
And that's how you came along.
All right. Well, okay, cool. I guess I don't know why I thought there would be more to it than that, but I think that was a simple answer. It makes sense.
The reason there was a big gap between my oldest sister and my younger sister is because I think your grandma had a bunch of miscarriages in between. She was trying to have more kids, but she was having problems with it, and I think that my sister Arlene and I were just fortuitous that didn't get.
And so you buy Winston Water Services. You have me, and so I mean, growing up, I think you kind of struck a good balance of kind of what your dad did. I mean, it seems like your dad kind of threw you, into the fire in a lot of cases, and whenever you had to learn a skill. I guess there was a little bit of that with me. Like, I think I learned to drive a forklift before I learned to drive a car.
Sure you did.
Because I remember tooling around on the forklift when I was really young. And there were some scary moments, like
when you drove through the little office door.
There was that, and I just remember being. I just remember picking up those, like, when we would get a salt delivery, and like having to like navigate the forklift, because those pallets weighed as much as the forklift, and so sometimes you just be teetering on your front wheels, and I'm like, I'm 12, should I be doing this? I don't know. Figured it out. So I guess there was a little bit of that with me.
I need to explain that a little bit. Okay, your grandparents' generation, and even the generations before that figured that kids were just free labor and that you worked them until they ran away, basically, and you got all this free labor, you know, and that's why I ended up, you know, working so much growing up.
Yeah.
And I didn't really like that, but at the same time, I got a good work ethic out of it. So I thought it was important that you experience work and get out, and you did. You and Kenny had a real good work ethic. I mean, in fact, even your older brother had a good work ethic.
Yeah, because I mean, our summers were spent running routes with you, and that was actually a lot of fun. I mean, you know, it was kind of boring when you're a kid, you know, but you know, you would always take us to do something at the end of the day, you know, and so that was kind of fun. And you know, we got to travel a lot, you know, at least in California.
Yeah,
so
took you to every cavern in California.
Yeah, that was really cool. Yeah, we did that one summer. We went to every single underground
kept offering
cavern.
to descale those for them, and they wouldn't let me.
Because I got a chemical that'll do it. How would you like a nice, smooth surface all the way, consistent? You know, these stalagmites are overrated.
Yeah.
Natural formations. No. That's so funny. And again, for the listening audience, that's what my dad does. Is he makes chemicals that keep boilers from big industrial boilers you would find at, you know, factories or laundromats. His chemical keeps them from scaling up with calcium and other minerals internally, which can cause a lot of problems. So that's the joke. Now that jokes are funnier when you explain them, right? Is that? Cool. Well, we kind of hit the mark here, Dad. What was there? Were there any parting words of wisdom you'd like to leave on with the audience, or any fun anecdotes maybe about your dad that you didn't get to share? Any fond memories of Grandpa?
No,
No.
I'm just going to end with saying that, you know, fatherhood is one of the great joys in life, and it was something I actually was looking forward to, being a parent and being a father. And I think that in this time, sometimes it doesn't get the I don't know how to say it. It doesn't get the enthusiastic response that it should. You know, raising a child and watching him grow and turn into somebody that you know you really are proud of is a good thing. And it's worth it. It's worth all the work and all the effort and, you know, all the parent-teacher conferences and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
So, no.
And one thing I forgot to ask you, too, it's actually a question I ask of my guests in regards to their dads, but I guess I'll ask it of you in regards to myself. But what did you think when I told you I was going to do stand-up comedy? What were your thoughts?
Well, you know, I had some reservations because I was thinking of in terms of what your life would be like on the road a lot if you were really going to pursue this as a lifetime career. And I was concerned that you might not really enjoy doing that.
Sure.
And at the same time, I was a little bit envious because I thought, boy, that must be really cool to be a stand-up comedian. I should have done that when I was your age. And so, no, I'm really proud of you. It's, again, you researched it and got into it, and you've gone whole hog and done well with it. And,
I think I get that whole hog thing from you, because that was one of the things I always admired about you was your bravery, and you would have an idea and you would just, like, let's just see it all the way through to the end. And I think about that fish pond as a great example of that. Where the stupid birds kept eating all the fish.
You know, and that was the frustrating part about that is we had a fish pond before and we're successful at it. In fact, it was kind of an accident that we had this pond, and it was basically because the water would puddle there from irrigation and so on and so forth. And so I had gone fishing and I caught a couple of big catfish and I brought them home and threw them in the pond. And little did I know they were pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And so they, multiplied. And
And that was many years ago. I mean,
Yeah,
that was,
so it didn't seem like it was. It seemed like it would be an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and so what was that like? That was probably 15 or 16 years ago. You decided to build another pond out here, and you put a lot of work into it. I mean, it was beautifully engineered the way you did it, and then you filled it with water, all the water, and then you filled it with fish, and then all of a sudden, all these protected birds like these herons and cranes start showing up and eating all the
and they were never there when we had the first pond. But I remember when I was in high school, that's when we started seeing seagulls in the Central Valley. I've never seen them before.
Yeah.
And these herons were just something new. And they stayed for some reason, and I'm seeing that a lot. There's a lot of animals. For the first time, I saw a skunk just down the road.
I saw maybe a couple of years ago, had a raccoon was wandering around in my bushes outside, and I've seen some foxes and
possums.
It's kind of weird. I wonder.
I think there's so much development going on in the mountains that they're
migrating now.
Yeah, coming down.
Yeah. Well, that was a weird note to end on. But Dad. Well, thanks so much for being on. That was a special Father's Day edition of Sad Dad. You were great.
Well, I enjoyed it.
You're a pro, Dad. You're a natural.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. And we're back. That was my dad, everybody. It's fun, right? Talked about all kinds of stuff. You had a bathroom emergency when we were recording it. You needed some TP.
I didn't know where it was.
You didn't. Did you see where it was so you can get it next time?
In the spare room.
Yeah, in the spare room. All right, guys. Well, we'll be back here again on Thursday in our regularly scheduled time with a real funny guy named Chris Estrada. I think you're going to like that episode, too. We get into some... we touch on some stuff that I've never touched on in this show before about Chris's upbringing, and real interesting dude. And I'll see you soon. Adios.
Adios.